Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Phantom Perspectives, and today we're going to be discussing episode 8 of Danny Phantom, Prisoners of Love. And in this episode, Danny winds up we finally go into the ghost zone actually. In the beginning of the episode, Danny winds up going to his dad for presumably like a math question or something, or some kind of school or some subject or whatever. But his dad pulls him into his newest invention, a vehicle called a Spectre Speeder. It's essentially a hovercraft. It's essentially like a hover car. It has all this high tech equipment built into it. It can do everything. It has a cup holder. But while Jack is showing this off to Danny, and even pulling Danny inside, Maddie winds up coming down and and tries to get Jack to remember and says that there's something important about the day. Which he keeps hinting about it, asking Jack, "Have you forgotten anything at all?" And as they keep going over it, and as they actually continue on about it, and as she keeps trying to hint and Jack tries to remember, it turns out that he forgot their wedding anniversary, which pisses Maddie off something fierce because apparently this is a constant thing. For the past 18 years, he has forgotten about the wedding anniversary. And yeah, it gets to Maddie as she gets so mad that she winds up punching the Spectre Speeder, and it winds up which somehow turns it on while Danny is still inside and causes it to fly right smack dab into the ghost zone, which I'm surprised Maddie or Jack didn't notice. But when we get into the ghost zone, it's creepy. Like, it's very disturbing and kind of actually makes sense for it. Like, its entire I wouldn't exactly call it a void. It's not like I think it's not like I think the closest we kind of got to the ghost zone, though even then you could probably say it wasn't the ghost zone, was Splitting Images. But again, that you could probably say it wasn't the ghost zone. And with this episode, it kind of shows that wasn't, because as that episode showed, that was mostly just Sidney Poindexter's own personal hell. But now we actually get to see it, and it's like complete chaos. It's just everything. It's like you got stairs that go nowhere, floating doors that each lead to a different ghost's domain. You got protoplasm, you got ectoplasm, just kind of floating all over the place. Just spirits of the dead, just graves going up. Essentially, the entire place is just a giant, weird. It's like it's like a haunted house. It's just very creepy and surreal, and it really, and just from looking at it, I think kind of lives up to it. Like, and the fact that we never saw it, the fact that we finally get to see it is actually a really nice detail. And on top of that, we also meet a new villain. In this case, a ghost called Warden Walker, and I'm guessing it's supposed to be a pun on Walker, Texas Ranger. But either way, that's pretty much what he is. He's the closest thing to a lawman that the Ghost Zone has, as he's constantly dressed in a giant white trench coat with black gloves, black boots, and a black fedora. But he has got a white face, like think either green or red eyes, I don't remember. And he's again the closest thing the Ghost Zone has to law enforcement. Though even then, I think he's a little twisted in how he does it, because when Danny comes when Danny comes driving in on the Spectre Speeder, he calls Danny out because apparently this is him piloting an illegal vehicle. And while Danny tries telling him, "I'm not from around here, I didn't know that was a rule," he winds up telling him that he needs to. He ends up telling Danny that ignorance doesn't, that despite the fact that he was ignorant, it doesn't excuse him. So but he does let him go at least, but tells him that if he ever sees him around the Ghost Summit again, he will arrest him. So Danny just takes that advice and then just goes full reverse out of the Ghost Zone and back through the portal, where his parents are still arguing, and neither of them are aware that Danny was ever left. As such, Maddie storms out, and then we cut to and after the theme song, we cut to the next day, where Maddie seems to be storming out again to go stay with her sister in a place called Spittoon, Arkansas. Though I think that's what it was called, and apparently for a divorce of some kind. And for most of the episode, we're led to believe that Maddie was just so mad that she actually is considering divorcing Jack, which does freak out Danny, something fierce, but again, something consistent that I kind of like, because we've seen this before in other episodes, and because despite Jack's obsession with hunting ghosts, he does care about his family, and he does care about Maddie. As such, As such, while Jazz thinks that Jack will just do nothing to try and fix the problem, Jack says that's where you're wrong. I'm gonna go all the way to Arkansas and I'm gonna try and give her the best damn apology that I can give her. As such, he gets packed up and goes to Arkansas, and well, Jazz just kind of turns into an emotional wreck. In the meantime, though, while they're gone, Danny is trying to clean the house up so that when his parents come back, his mom will at least have a clean home to return to. But when he goes to clean out the lab, it turns out there's just junk everywhere. So to try and make things easier, he's been doing this the whole time. He's been using his powers to help clean up. Like he's been flying and using the vacuum to vacuum off the walls and so forth. And so when he starts cleaning up the lab, his way of cleaning it is just to zap everything with his ectoblast, which I have no idea how blasting something puts it away. Like, next time I need to clean my room, do I just need to grab a gun and start shooting it and it'll all magically fly into place? I don't know. But while he's shooting everything, he winds up accidentally hitting a present, which winds up flying directly into the open Ghost Zone portal. Which I don't know why it was open, but whatever. And when Danny goes to investigate, he finds a little note attached to it, and it turns out that the present was meant for Maddie. It was supposed to be Jack's apology present that he wound up forgetting when he went to Arkansas, and Danny just blasted it into the Ghost Zone. In the meantime, Jack does get to Arkansas, and we see Maddie's sister is kind of like the opposite of her. While she's just even tougher. She apparently is single, and if the episode's anything to go by, she's been divorced for 10 years, and she's been good, and she's been happy. She does everything she can. Apparently Maddie's been telling her sister about what Jack's been doing, and of course she's been trying to encourage her to leave him. But of course Maddie isn't exactly on board with that. But when Jack suddenly shows up, though of course Jack winds up literally falling in because in terms of the only plane that you can use to get the spittoon, you have to actually parachute out of, which is a little odd, but whatever, cartoon. As such, Jack does want to apologize, but he doesn't really know what to do. There's still a bit of tension going on. In the meantime, Danny is still freaking out. Sorry, my phone. Danny's still freaking out and actually talks to Sam and Tucker about what he's been doing, about him blasting the president into the Ghost Zone. And the more he talks to them, and the more Tucker kind of makes things worse by saying, as long as she didn't mention the word divorce or said it twice, pretty much she's just making Danny feel even worse and worse because he thinks that because of him and his parents are now going to get split up. But he decides that he's going to go right into the Ghost Zone and get the present, which he ends up doing. He gets a little headset that's hooked up to Tucker's PDA so that they can still communicate with Danny and it even has a little camera so they can see the Ghost Zone with him. And so Danny flies into the Ghost Zone, not taking the Spectre speeder, and he just and we can further see just how creepy and alien this place is. Oh crap! Yeah, I gotta be careful with my support on this because anything I think could knock it down. Crap baskets. Anyway, as I was saying, I'm just trying to be sure that this thing doesn't fall off again. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, so Danny and we see the first door. Danny goes through one door to try and find the present, but it turns out it leads to the lair of this ghost kid that seems to be reenacting the scene from what was it? I think it was Scream. No, that wasn't Scream. I don't know the horror movies. Oh, Poltergeist. That was it. Where it's just a kid, which is a lone kid watching a static TV, except. Yeah, he's a ghost, so when Danny walks in and intrudes on his space, he turns into a monster. There's these skeletons that are clawing. No, you do not! Okay, hold on a second. Sorry about that. My support isn't exactly staying in place right now. Anyway, so Danny, there's skeletons that are coming out of the graves, but Danny eventually manages to find the present. As Tucker begins playing with the Spectre Speeder, it turns out that it actually kind of can map out that somehow, I don't know how, it somehow has a map of the Ghost Zone on it that actually allows you to find items that don't belong there, including the present. So Danny is able to find the present, except it's in the box Ghost domain. But before he can find out where it is, suddenly they're both attacked, and suddenly they're both in, I guess you could say, ghost cuffs. That something blasts them that somehow puts them in cuffs. And it turns out it's Warden Walker who's making good on his promise. To arrest Danny if he ever came back to the Ghost Zone. So he takes the headset, citing that this is apparently illegal to have it, or at least he made up of a rule so that he could arrest Danny. And he then hauls Danny in the box ghost to Ghost J to his penitentiary, to his own private penitentiary, where it turns out all of Danny's enemies are being held. In there we see Skulker, we see Desiree, we see Technus somehow back in his suit, and even in the cafeteria you see the lunch lady, which I kind of find a little funny, but whatever. But bottom line, Walker pretty much tells Danny that he's going to be here a long time. As a first offender, he'll be light on him, and the lightest offense is 1,000 years in prison, which, yeah, you know that something's not right there. In the meantime, as such, when it comes to, lunchtime, and Danny is thrown out into the cafeteria, and yeah, pretty much all of his enemies are ready to kick his ass, because they not only blame him for sending them back to the Ghost Zone, but for also landing them here. So they end up fighting Danny, and for some reason, for the entire time he's in the Ghost Zone, he seems to forget about some of his ghost powers, including his power to blast things. Like, he doesn't use that at all in the Ghost Zone. I don't know why. I don't think he uses most of his powers. The closest we get is him flying, but bottom line, they still overpower him, but Danny, before they can beat him into a stain on the ground, Danny ends up appealing to them somewhat, telling them that while he was the one that sent him back to the Ghost Zone, he wasn't the one that locked them up in this penitentiary. It was Warden Walker. They could spend their time fighting, but it'd probably be best if they could if they worked together, they might be able to bust out of here, and then once they're back outside, they can do whatever the hell they want. As such, while they don't like him, they do realize that he has a point. Everyone in the prison realizes that Danny has a point, so they decide to listen to his plan. In the meantime, Tucker and Sam are a little worried about Danny after they lost contact with him, and so they jump into the Spectre Speeder, partly to get away from Jazz, who is so freaked out that she's looking for any reason for why her logic would be flawed, and wants their opinion on her diaries. And they use it to go into the Ghost Zone, where they end up getting a bit lost and wind up asking that the princess from the parental bonding episode, for directions, and in response she transforms into the dragon, because I'm guessing they gave her back the Amulet of Aragon, and so she ends up attacking the Spectre Speeder. As such, the group Tucker and Sam are flying off, but they manage to get to the penitentiary. Only when they manage to go inside, when they manage to get there, the Spectre Speeder flies right through the wall. In the meantime, in the prison, Skulker and Danny are getting into a fight, and Danny seems to lose and break his leg. And so, just as the guards are coming to bring him to the infirmary, Danny ends up jumping one of them and steals one of their batons, which apparently can shoot lasers. And by that I mean the lasers that can cuff the ghosts. But pretty much he throws it to Skulker, and it leads to a giant riot where pretty much all the prisoners manage to overpower the guards. We see that apparently the lunch lady can summon a giant chicken leg, and I'm kind of glad Tim isn't here, because I imagine he would say something about that. She manages to knock most of the guards aside, but when everyone starts trying to run out, Danny does not join them, as he says he still needs to see the warden, because the warden actually has the present, because it's considered illegal contraband, so he needs to keep it under lock and key. As such, Danny goes to Walker's office, but Walker is still apparently stronger than him. Again, I will get back to that, because that does kind of bug me a little. And, you know what? Well, yeah, that's a problem. Danny does not use most of his ghost powers, but I'll get to that later. But again, one of the things that happened, when Justice Walker is about to punish him, Sam and Tucker fly in the Spectre Speeder, and reveal to Danny a honestly kind of lame excuse for why they've been able to do this, because apparently in the ghost zone they're considered the ghost because, oh, they're ghosts, they're ethereal, we can just pass right through them, and here we're the ghosts. And so Danny, using that knowledge, turns back into his human form, and apparently Walker just can't touch him anymore, and he just strolls over and grabs the box, and then he just joins Sam and Tucker out, and yeah, I have opinions on this. I'm gonna stop now, because this is kind of the biggest BS moment in the episode. Like, there's the stuff with Danny not using all of his powers while in the ghost zone, which I don't get, because I think he could use more than just flight or something, and I know he probably wouldn't be able to pass through walls, because, again, ghost zone and all that, but he could at least blast things, or put up a shield or something. He should be able to at least use that, and it would be effective enough, I think. But he doesn't do that, and it's just that for some reason he doesn't use his ghost powers while in the ghost zone, and you could probably say it's the cuffs, but even when he's not wearing them, he doesn't use his powers. But then another thing that I think... But this is kind of the dumber... But honestly, I think this is the dumbest moment of the episode. Namely, just Danny, or in this case, humans apparently being untouchable in the ghost zone, which... Yeah, I don't buy. I don't buy for a second. Like, for starters, if that were true, the instant Danny turned human, he should have fallen right through the floor. Because if he can just phase through everything as a human because it's ghost and therefore ethereal, then that means that he should have, that the instant he turned human, he should have fallen right through the floor. And because Sam and Tucker have just been flying through everything, and yet on top of that, and yet for some reason, and yet when he turns human, apparently, what, does it not count as the floor? Is the floor technically is the floor a constant across dimensional planes? And then there's the second thing, and this is kind of the dumbest one in my opinion: Walker not being able to touch him, which I think is still BS. I think it's just as much BS as Danny not using all what he knows about his powers. In the case of this, he should still be able to touch Danny. Just because he's human doesn't mean he's untouchable. As we've seen in previous episodes, when a ghost has interacted with a human or anything from the human world, they've still been able to touch it. If that was the case, like, they can control how ethereal they are. Like, it's like imagine if any of the ghosts from the ghost zone decided to just to poke you annoyingly. You could try and swat their hand away, but your hand would just phase right through because they can control they can control that. They can control their tangibility. They should be able to do that at any point. When all the ghosts leave the ghost zone, they're able to control how tangible they are, and likewise, they could probably control how tangible they are when they're coming in contact with humans. On top of that, if that was the case, then at least Walker shouldn't be able to grab the present. I know you can make the argument that he probably used that ray on it to keep it stable enough to grab, but again, there's stuff that I don't like. That doesn't really make sense to me. And I know you can make the argument about, oh well, maybe it's like they don't have the full extent of their powers in the ghost zone, to which I say that's BS. The first time Danny saw Walker, he was a giant. When Danny flew in, he suddenly just appeared in a massive green flame. He was a giant, a literal giant. Well, like, this is me, like, I'm Walker. This was the Spectre Speeder. That's how big he was in comparison to it. And then when Danny reversed, he just disappeared into the aether. So they still have their ghost powers in the ghost zone. So he should have been able to do that. On top of that, if ghosts can't touch anything in the ghost zone, then how the heck was the dragon able to attack the Spectre Speeder? Because that was one of the reasons why Sam and Tucker were flying off, because the dragon was knocking them around in the Spectre Speeder. So that should have been able to do something to them. They should, like, it shows that the ghosts can still interact with humans in there, or human objects at least. In that case, and on top of that, we've seen ghosts interact with humans. If you want to talk about it, there was Skulker and that nerd that he glued to the wall in his debut episode. There was Technus and him controlling inanimate objects and controlling inanimate objects or even attacking them. He was sucked into a vacuum, and then on top, it just doesn't really add up to me. Like, it just doesn't add up. They should be able to control how tangible they are in comparison to humans. Just because they're ghostly doesn't mean that they're untouchable. And that's the case with, and that's just, And for some reason, I don't buy it. And on top of that, later episodes actually show that when humans go into the ghost zone, they are at risk. If you don't have superpowers, you are at risk of getting hurt or possibly dying. That is something they show. Just because you're human, don't mean you're untouchable. It just means you're human and less and more likely to get killed. As such, it doesn't really make sense to me that Danny being human was enough to beat Walker. It just doesn't make sense to me, and it just feels dumb. It's a small issue, I admit, but it just kind of raises plot holes, and it just feels dumb. And I'm sorry, but anyway, I'm just gonna try to wrap this. I'm trying to wrap the summary up at least. So, Danny manages to get the present, and he manages to escape with Sam and Tucker, and then and of course they end up going to Arkansas as well, as Jack actually does give a rather heartfelt speech about how while he may be a doofus that gets into his work, but just as much as he's sure that ghosts are real and Maddie's sister's kind of is a brute or a hag, or I don't remember how he described it. It was something rude. He still loves Maddie and would do anything for her. At which point he realizes he forgot the present, but then Danny and Jazz parachute in, and Danny makes up an excuse about why that they kept it there to keep the mosquitoes from getting in. Maddie's happy, everything seems to be going good, and Danny says, so you're not getting a divorce. And then it turns out that the reason Maddie is here is not just because she needs some time away, or more specifically, I don't think she actually did need some time away. I think if Jazz was right, then she probably would have just let this stew and be mad for a while. No, she's here for another reason. It turns out that this day is the anniversary of her sister's divorce, and apparently she's been celebrating it for 10 years. I guess she just had that much of an unhappy marriage, to the point where when they actually invite her ex-husband to come, he's in a dunk tank. And it's kind of dumb. I openly admit it's kind of dumb. Yeah, I don't really have much to say on it. It's just dumb. So, in the meantime, everyone's happy. They're all partying, and Maddie opens her present, and it turns out the box goes hitched a ride in it. And so Maddie and Jack are happily chasing after the box ghost together, while Jazz is glad that things are that they're acting more in line with how they're supposed to be. So, on the whole, what did I think of Prisoners of Love? It's not that great. I hesitate to call it a bad episode, but at the same time, it's not really an episode I would return to. Even as a kid, I saw this episode and it just kind of made me scratch my head. But again, there are some good things about it that I really do like. I like that we finally get to see the ghost zone, and it is creepy. It is very creepy. I love the design about it, how kind of Lovecraftian, or just kind of like how Lovecraftian it just seems to be, and how it's like you're not, if you're here, there's not a safe space. There is nothing here that's safe. The instant you enter here, you got to be careful of everything and everyone, otherwise you might just be the next thing on the menu, which I find very interesting. Though there are duds in the Box Ghost. I like the idea. For one thing, I like that this episode also kind of has almost all of Danny's villains in previous episodes in one convenient place, with the only exception being the octopuses, because they weren't really that much of villains. They were just one-off creatures. Vlad Plasmus, because for obvious reasons, and Sidney Poindexter, because he's not from the ghost zone. He's a spirit who's trapped in who's a spirit that's trapped in a mirror. But with that all being said, I do kind of like the design of that, and I like seeing all these villains together, even though most of them don't really have speaking lines. Now that I think about it, the only villains the only one we see, like I said, Technus and Desiree are also here, but I can't think of a single moment in the episode where they actually talk. They do not talk. Desiree and Technus are silent throughout all these. And again, I'm wondering why Walker allowed Technus to have create a technology suit, a suit of technology for himself. Like, why does he have that here? Shouldn't he be in his mad scientist garb or whatever? I think I don't know. It's just kind of weird. On top of that, he doesn't really seem to detain them beyond just putting shackles on them and putting them in typical black and white prison garb. Beyond that, their abilities don't seem to be hampered that much. As I mentioned before, with the lunch lady summoning that giant stick of meat, or just the box ghost still floating around, or doing all that stuff. Their powers don't seem to be hampered, so it makes me wonder why he was able to beat them so easily. Even through the cups hamper their powers? Well, the instant they get them off, then why don't they just keep doing their thing? Or are they afraid the guards will shoot him? Why didn't they try a raid like this? Why didn't they try a riot like this before? I don't know. It's just kind of weird. The more you watch episodes, the more questions start being raised, ironically, and that's kind of a problem with that. Not really. Actually, it's not really ironic. It's just the more you watch the episode, the more you start noticing these little problems that kind of do keep adding up as you keep watching it. And it does hamper your enjoyment a little. Like, why doesn't Dan use his powers when he's in all of his powers when he's in the ghost zone? Why don't the rest of the ghosts use their powers? Do the cuffs hamper their powers? Well, in that case, the instant they come off, shouldn't they be able to use them again? We know they can because the lunch lady was able to use all their powers. Why didn't they plan a riot like this before? Or are they just afraid of Walker? And then, of course, there's that whole plot hole with how ghosts in the ghost zone can't touch humans, even though we've seen that ghosts can apparently touch things that are completely tangible. Are still tangible enough to touch things in the human world. I don't get that. It's just, and the more you watch it, the more problems start being raised, and it's just weird. And ironically, I think this is all this is mostly present in the second half of the episode. The first half just kind of is nice setting it up. We see some nice action. Walker looks intimidating. We see the ghost zone, like everything before the first commercial break. I can actually kind of get behind. But everything after just kind of makes me think, huh? And that kind of also goes for Jack. That kind of goes for the Jack and Maddie subplot. And here's the thing: that one is not connected to the other. Is at least a little bit connected to what's going on with Danny, since went into the ghost zone to get the present for his parents. But in this case, what I like about it is that we see more of Jack in his. Well, we see Jack actually trying. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. I heard someone open a door. I just wanted to keep mine closed so they'd know, because I have a little sign. Anyway, something about that I like is that, well, we see more of how just how much Jack cares about his family. Like I mentioned before, during the Mystery Meat vlog, me, Haley, and Tim, or at least I did bring this up, and I did bring it up. But in that episode, we saw Jack actually apologized to Jazz when he kept thinking she was a ghost and almost swore off ghost hunting until he saw Danny fly through. At which point he did a heel face turn on that. And on this case, while he is mostly ignorant, he does care about he does care about Maddie. He cares about his son. He cares about his daughter. Like when he sees he's messed up, he tries his best to make it better. And this whole episode is real. This whole episode actually kind of exemplifies that. And I think it's kind of cute for something. And I think it's kind of cute because I like seeing him going to Arkansas just so that he can try and be better to Maddie. And when he learns how word's been spreading about what's been going on, that he tries to put on a hillbilly facade to try and do that, but then when he thinks the whole thing's stupid, he finally just says, you know what, no, and he speaks from the heart. And I like that sort of thing, and while he realizes his own shortcomings too, he does genuinely want to do good things. He's definitely trying to be better, and I like that. I like that sort of thing. I just kind of like that. It's nothing great, I will admit, but it is cute, it's nice. I like seeing Jack go to all this effort, and admittedly, I kind of like seeing Maddie's sister. She's just kind of the butch. She's just very butch and just likes living on her own, to the point where she actually is critical of Jack and Maddie's relationship, which I kind of find funny. She just does not like Jack, period. Which I suppose you could say she was soured by her own wedding, or she just doesn't like Jack. Either way, it's just nice. And that's another thing I will give credit to this episode. It's got some funny jokes here. It still has some good jokes here and there. Like in the beginning, like with the box ghost, the box ghost really shines in this episode, and we see that apparently everyone's annoyed by him. Like when he's in prison, he's still doing his wailing and so forth. But once he tries it, just Skulker punches him out. It's funny. It's just really nice. But on top of that, we still see more of the. I'm sorry if there's any background noise. I have my window open and my fan in the window. But anyway, I'm sorry about that. It's just a little technical difficulty. I'm trying to keep this as focused as I can, people. I'm sorry. But I just kind of like that sort of thing. Just seeing that attention to detail and so forth. I like that. I genuinely enjoy seeing that and so forth. But I like seeing the jokes, and that's what I was talking about, the jokes. I like the jokes can be funny here and there, like when Tucker just makes things worse, and he mentions divorce, or one scene where one hillbilly has just this awful dental care, has awful dental care, and the other hillbillies are like, and the hillbillies like, just shut you. Oh, for gosh darn it, get your teeth fixed. You're making us look bad, and they all have good teeth, which I'm a little jealous of, but whatever. But bottom line, but on the whole, honestly, it's kind of a mixed bag. But I'm kind of on the eh, side of this. I don't hate this episode, as there are still some things in there I think are interesting and at least worth seeing. But there's other things in there that just make me scratch my head and honestly raise too many questions when you actually stop and think about it. So yeah, on the whole, Prisoners of Love is just kind of eh, just to me. Not awful. Still, there's still some things worth watching, but overall, just eh. Just kind of a little dumb. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I have. That's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I will see you next week. Take care.